Welcome everybody to Red G Fox channel. Thank you for joining us. So this is a two-parter. It's been requested from one of our members, Mike Lutton. And if you have not ever seen it, please find a way to go watch it. I bought them on DVDs. There's other websites you can find it. And that is from the series Sanford. In this one, it's season 2, episode 1 and 2, two-parter, where Fred turns out to be married to Aunt Esther. And this has some great, especially part 1, has non-stop comical lines. We'll cover that. We're going to do all part 1 here. Part 2 will be for members only video. Eventually, it'll be all Sanford series after we're done doing our chronological order of Sanford and Son. We're almost to season 4. When season 6 is done, all the members only, Sanford videos only, will be released to everybody because it's such a great series. And I'm going to re-go through them again, but as of now, members only. So here comes the bride, part 1. Let's get to it. Oh my gosh. It's got some of the best stuff in it. And the fact that you have Cliff, you got Cal, you got, I wish we would have had like Rollo or someone else pop up into it. But that's one of the things. Rollo did disappear some in season 2, which was a disappointment. But this is season 2, episode 1. Here Comes the Bride. IMDb gives it 6.5. Now, watching it and being a fan of the series, I gotta say, no way. This should be at least 7.3, 7.4, especially with Evelyn, the interaction with Evelyn, the fact you got Esther there, and Cal this has some of the best Cal, I think, with him constantly laughing. He's got so many great jokes and gets so many great lines on Fred, and when he sits there, and Fred finds out, and he's like, ama, and he's all, you. Let's look at that one. Man, Cal, yeah, this is a great episode for Cal. So before we get to the summary and all the clips, let's get to, first up, fun facts. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
All right, for fun facts today, we just got one, and that is Aunt Esther. Throughout this one, she several times makes complaints about her silverware. And even her son Cliff, he's like, my silverware. He's mimicking her. And she's like, that silverware that Fred had was willed to her from Elizabeth when Elizabeth passed on. And remember, if you go back to Sanford and Son, multiple times, there's multiple episodes where, remember, even like the one where Fred allows Lamont to bring his whole touchy-feely group with Achu and all those people to come, and he says none of them took his silverware. Several times he brings up silverware, and this is the exact same silverware, and all these years later we find out that it's actually Esther's, supposedly. And so that brings up the whole reason for them to go search through and find out that, you know, who's married to her. But yeah, that's pretty cool that it's actually mentioned several times in Sanford and Son, and here Esther brings it up again, all about the silverware. All this time we had no clue that it was possibly hers. And one other fact, just a side note, this is the first time we ever learn about Uncle Woody passing. Fred does make a reference to him passing away. Let's look at it real quick. It is pretty funny.
Whatever happened to Esther's real husband?
Woody?
Yeah.
Oh, he died and went to heaven. He had to go to heaven because he caught all the hell it was while he
That's such a good line. He caught all the hell while he was up here married to Esther. So yeah, we learned that Uncle Woody's not around. Real life Raymond Allen was still alive. I wonder why they didn't bring him. Maybe they couldn't squeeze him into this. It would have been awkward saying he's married to, you know, Fred, and all the nonsense that went on might have kind of threw a wrench in the plan. So they said, let's just bring Esther. So that is it with our fun facts. Let's get to familiar faces.
Wait a minute. May I ask you a personal question? Who are you?
All right, familiar faces today. We have, our first one is the guy who plays the lawyer in here. And I've seen him in other stuff. He's such a familiar face and actor. His name is Leslie Wilson. He sadly passed away in 2010, and he was at the age of 66. You know, as I'm getting older, when I was younger, 66 seemed like a reptile, you know, a dinosaur. But now I look at it and I'm like, you know what, 66? It ain't all that. You know, I at least I'm hoping I outlive it. But he passed away at 66. He appeared in 25 different movies and shows, and even was a writer for one of them. So it's always cool when you see guys behind the scenes either directing, writing, or producing. His final appearance was in Tales of the Crypt in 1992. I'm pretty sure most of us, even if you didn't see the show, you've heard of it. He also appeared in Cotton Comes to Harlem, ironically, with Red Fox and Bubba Bexley, and in our previous episodes, Judy Pace. So those three were all in Cotton Comes to Harlem, as well as this guy right here, Leslie Wilson. He also did 32 episodes of My Mama. Some people have mentioned that before, if you ever bring up this actor. 2 times. He was in the series, this is wild, I didn't know this. 2 different times he was in the series Sanford Arms. So you think, hey, of all of them, you want to be in Sanford's Son. That was the biggest of all of them. But then I'd rather be in Sanford. But he's 1 appearance in Sanford and 2 of Sanford Arms. 3 episodes of The White Shadow. And he was in Night Court, another Sanford and Son alumni. And that was John Larroquette, who played kind of like the Lamont version in Steinberg and Son. So that is it on him. And he's the only one for this episode. Part 1, he's the only familiar face. In part 2, oh my gosh, I think I got about 5. There's so many people in that one, including a guy who had been in over 200 plus movies and shows. He played, his biggest role to me was he was MacGyver's grandpa in the series MacGyver. But we'll get to that in part 2. But yeah, that one's got a bunch, and including him, that's the most of any actor we've ever covered on our familiar faces in all of Sanford and Son history up to this point we're at. So let's get to the summary.
And who is this?
Oh, a friend of mine left his hunting dog with me.
All right, in the summary, it's pretty simple. We see Cal come in, and he's brought Cliff and someone else, and he's like, we should have told Fred that she was coming, and he's like, I don't know how. And in comes Aunt Esther. Oh my gosh, let's get to her, because when she sees the house, even though we know, hey, it's been remodeled and changed up some, she still sees it as the same old evil place. Let's check it.
These ain't been changed in years. Same old couch, same old chair. Lord have mercy. Same old dude.
That's so funny. Evil, man. Everything's filthy. But she's there because Cliff's grades are slipping. And she's like, I'm going to stay here. Because Cliff's like, you really didn't have to come, Mom. And she's like, no, until you get it, I'm going to stick around here. And he's like, I'm doing okay. And what's her response to that? She's like, no. C's aren't going to cut it. And he's like, oh, I'm doing okay. She's got a little word for him. Reminiscent of Fred to Lamont.
But I'm doing all right. Yeah, if you want to graduate stupid, dummy.
Oh, I love it. It's so funny to hear her say dummy. And just when, I mean, LaWanda Page is such a jewel. So when you get these things that are outside, I've seen her in other shows where she's outstanding, but still playing Esther and it's outside of Sanford and Son, bonus. It's bonus material. It's overtime for football. You know, it's like, hey man, the football game was great. Now I got overtime. That's what Sanford is to me. It's like, oh my gosh, it's not the whole game, but it's the most exciting part. It's the end of it, and it has some great moments, and LaWanda Page is definitely one of them. So she ends up eventually saying, like we mentioned earlier, the silverware. She's like, look, man, if Fred would just give me his silverware, because he's been holding it out, and Cliff's even like, my silverware, mocking her. She's all, he give me my silverware, I'll shut my mouth. And Cal has a great response to this one.
Well, as soon as he give me my silverware back, I'll shut my mouth.
He may go for that deal.
Watch it, sucker.
100%. I guarantee Cal's right. Fred would totally go for that deal and give it to her. So they're going to put her some of the stuff to help make it ready. The trunk is still on the ground, and that's when Cal's like, hey, take off your coat, take off your shoes, and relax. You know, he's Texas Southern hospitality. And she's like, don't even think about it, Kinky. Cal's like, what? He doesn't want anything to do with Esther like that. So she goes in. Cal goes to help get the stuff ready. So the door's open, and in comes Fred and Evelyn. And Fred is smelling something. He even says, he's like, I smell something ugly in here, you know? And she's like, no, you smell great. He's thinking it's about him. And he's being flirty, and they start kissing and sitting on the couch having a good time. And in comes walking Esther. And I have no idea why she's like so close to him, and she's staring at him. And then let's see the reaction when Fred goes, what the heck is this?
I told you it was some ugly news.
When he does that, he's like, I told you there was something ugly. And I love the fact that when he's like, when he even says the hunting dog, she's there. All these, he's got so many great lines. That's what I'm saying. They're back to perfect form, right? They just a little older. Maybe it's a little delay. Sometimes you don't see the difference with Sanford as opposed to Sanford and Son. And you even saw it in season 6. where you felt like maybe sometimes they were reading the cue cards, they didn't put as much effort into it. I don't think the effort's not here. I think it's just the timing is not as fast paced. It feels like they're saying something written down as opposed to just reacting, maybe ad-libbing. But it's still great. It's still better than anything we have nowadays. And like I said, I will always treasure Sanford. But then she says when they go to introduction, she's like, oh, I haven't been met. And Esther, surprisingly, is actually pretty kind to Evelyn, even though she says, let's just see it, the whole conversation between them.
Fred's told me a lot about you.
Honey, don't believe a word this old heathen said. Now, you look like a nice lady. I guess you don't realize you're going out with a married man.
I love when he says Beauty and the Beast. But she's like, you look like a nice woman. And the fact that Fred's like, Elizabeth passed, and she even said that. And she even says, I know the Bible. You know, you're supposed to stay until death do you part. And Fred rightfully says, Elizabeth parted. I don't get why Esther says that, because in the Bible it does not say after they die, you're still with them. So even Esther, who knows the Bible, totally gets it wrong here. And Evelyn leaves to try to let them situate things. And Fred's like, you're leaving too, Esther. And he's like, no, I'm staying here. And Fred's like, no. Fred's got an answer for that.
Listen, Cliff, you knew she was coming. You didn't say nothing to me.
I just didn't know how to tell you.
You're right. It ain't no good way.
I love when he tells Cliff, why didn't you tell me she was coming? He's like, I didn't know how. He's like, yeah, there is no perfect way. So now they're going to decide. They start getting into this whole thing about the silverware. That's the main thing, and it sets it up to where Fred's like, that's it. We're going to go. And they start digging. They're going to dig and look for the stuff. But before then, they get into a big fight about the silverware. And one of my favorite parts of this one, and it's just like a small little scene, is when Fred and Esther are ready to go throw blows as usual, and Cal's holding him back. He's like, no, Fred, you ain't gonna touch her, you ain't gonna do nothing. And then what happens when Cal actually does let him go?
Don't hold me! Don't you threaten me! You don't hold me now! Hold me!
That's so funny. That's so typical, right? Like you're in a fight and you're like, hey, don't let me go. And then they go and you don't do anything. Well, Fred's even worse. He's like, no, grab me. Let me go. Hold me. So great scene. I love that part right there. Fred's reaction, and even Cal, where he's like this. But that's when he goes and they start going through the papers, and Fred finds a picture and he's like, oh, there's a picture. Here's a picture of you, Esther, and rips it and gives it. He wants nothing to do with her in the photo album. And then Cal starts going through and he's like, hey, what's in here? He's trying to help him. Hey, let's find out. And he finds a love poem that Fred tries to take. This poem is another so corny but so funny. We got to hear the poem.
Elizabeth said to me from heaven above, you're the only woman I'll ever love. Looking at you ties my heart in knots. And touching you really gives me the hots.
Touching you really gives me the hots. And I love Fred. He's wiping the eyes. He's like, oh man, it's still so emotional. Oh my goodness. Yeah, see, there's a lot of funny parts in there. This is just like the first quarter of the thing. I mean, comment below if you think I'm wrong. If you've ever seen it, do you agree it's funny? If you haven't seen it, yes, give this video a watch and see what you think about it. Because part 2 is where everything takes place at the end. I won't spoil that. But let's get back to this. So the next thing he finally finds, he's still looking, and then Cal finds something else. He's like, what's this? And he's like, oh, that's the marriage license. And this is another one, probably one of my favorites from Cal in this episode. He gets some zingers off, but this one's really good when he's going through it, and he's like, oh boy. And he sees something. He's like, Fred, come here. I got to show you something. And then he's got some bad news, and his reaction to the bad news is what's even better.
Make it a little hard. It's going to tear your guts out.
You just let him something's gonna tear my guts out, and you laughing?
When he starts laughing just like that, when he's like, oh, it's gonna kill you. He laughs, and Fred's like, what, it's something so funny, it's gonna kill me? That's when he tells him Elizabeth signed where the witness was, and Esther signed where the bride was. And Fred goes ballistic. He can't believe that he is married. Even the thought of this is gonna give him a heart attack. It's so perfect. He's ready to have a heart attack. You. So he goes to tell Esther, and he's telling Esther, hey, come down here, read this. And she's like, looking at it, she's like, I can't read without my glasses. He's like, I wish I would have known that, 30 years ago, however long it was. So he tries to explain it to her, and he's like, here, you take. He can't even get it out. She's like, spit it out already. He's like, I can't, I need a drink. He goes in the kitchen while Esther sits there and goes to read it. And then Cal comes in. Or no, he comes down, and then we see her crying. And she's like, I can't believe it. And Cliff comes, and she's like, can't you see I'm arguing? She's saying, why, Lord, why? And she's saying, can't you see I'm talking with the Lord? Then Cal comes down, and he gets the biggest kick. He's like, hey, man, I'm really sorry. And he starts dying laughing. Rightfully so. That's why I said Cal has such a blast. I wonder if the actor, Dennis Berkeley, had a great time doing this. I know he loved doing the show, as I would as well. But if this was one of his favorite episodes, it's one of mine. And I know one of our members, too, Mike Lutton. So he goes in there, and he's talking with Fred, and that's when he asks a question about Woody, right? He pours him a Ripple, and he says, give me a triple shot. And he's all, triple Ripple? As they always have Ripple jokes. But Fred does. Fred basically finishes the bottle, but he makes a comment about Woody, and that's when he said, Woody passed away. We showed the clip earlier. And then in comes Cliff, because he's like, hey, something was out. As he comes in, he goes to say something, and there's a knock at the door, because look, Cliff said, hey, why don't you do something about it? And he's like, I did. I called a lawyer. So the lawyer's there. And then Cliff's like, hey, don't get up. He'll help it. And what does his comment say to Fred?
Oh, hold on. I'll get it. Daddy. Like little
Even Cliff's getting the zingers off. Hey, you know what? Hey, in reality, it's true. So they go out, Cliff's laughing, and Fred even says it's like being with some hyenas. So the lawyer comes in, and now he's basically saying he's got a little timer, and then the clocker, and they're ticking it back and forth. And he knows that, hey, when it's on, when we're discussing the case, it's got to be on. I'm charging you. That's how you get charged. And then they even want to sell coffee to him, and they're all buck a cup. They want to make their money back. And he's like, no thanks, I don't need the coffee. But what I love is when he says, tell me what happened, Fred goes into speed. And why does Fred talk so fast? Let's look at that clip.
The bride signed with the witness supposed to sign, witness signed with the bride supposed to sign, and actually they're not even involved. Wait, now slow down. What are you trying to do? Beat the clock?
It's like the game show. Beat the clock. And he's like, no, I got to do it this way, Mr. Sanford. But what's funny is he says it, and he's like, I'll wrap it up about $1,000, take care of it. And Fred's like, can you brown bag it, cheaper? And he's like, no. And that's when he's like, I don't have that much money. And so the lawyer's out of there. So now Fred's like, forget it. We'll handle it ourselves. We'll head to Fremont, Missouri. He tells Esther, come down. And she's like, nah, I ain't going anywhere with you old fool. We ain't doing nothing. He's like, all right. And then he starts acting like he's pulling off his shirt. He's all, well, I'll be up in a second, sweetheart. Like, honey. Let's look at it real quick. And then Esther's response.
Okay, honey. I'll be up there in a minute.
Get out the truck. We're going to Fremont.
That is so funny that Fred knows, hey, you know what? Fred doesn't want to go, but he calls it on the bluff, acts like he's going to come up there and snuggle with her. And she's like, Cliff, get the truck ready. We're going to Fremont, Missouri. So they're going to take off, and they're going to handle the divorce themselves, as rightfully so. To me, at this stage, does it really matter? We know in reality, it's a show, so they got him working in. But if I actually found out that something got confused like that, I don't care. I know. You said the vows to Elizabeth. Fred, you said it to Elizabeth. Elizabeth said it to you. Esther and Woody were on the side and said nothing. So you are technically married regardless of what you signed. But they got to have a show. We saw this in I Love Lucy, so this is not original. It's still great, though, in the fact that in I Love Lucy, it was her own husband, right? And then Ricky made a joke to try to teach Lucy a lesson, and then they have to go get remarried, and it backfires in Ricky's face. This one, though, it's your rival, right? It is your arch rival going heads up, and now you are married to them. So anytime in the past in Sanford and Son you had these two together, it was magical when they teamed up, like when they went to find out who Janet was, and it was Columbo and Esther was assistant, or when they teamed up and went against Big Money Grip, or when they teamed up for the beauty contest and they sang that duet. Even if Esther wasn't a great singer, it was still hysterical. And that's what this episode is. It brings the two villains, the two rivals together, and it has some great comedy and humor. So that is it. With that one, they take off, and then we will get to episode 2, which is going to be on right now. If you're a member, you can already watch it. I've posted both just for the regular channel and for the members only. And if you're not a member, you can go on our channel, look for membership, become one for even just $1 a month. We have different memberships, different prices. But we also go check out, it's for members only, but I post it for everyone to watch how it went. If you like it, you can become a member and go in our Sanford & Son Jeopardy challenge every 2 weeks. We will have that, as as well as all sorts of other big things. But have a great day. Enjoy your Friday. Thanks for watching. Comment below if you've seen this one. What are your thoughts on it? Do you love it? And is it one of your favorites? Would you compare it and say, hey, it ranks up there with some of the Sanford and Son episodes? Because to me it is. It's got to be in the 7s. I don't agree with the 6.5. I think this part 1 I think is better than part 2. I will say that. I think part 2 reminds me more of a little 80s cornballish humor. Still funny, but not as good as part 1, the interaction with Esther, Cal, Fred, and Cliff. So have a great day. Be safe. Enjoy your weekend. Talk to you later. Peace.